This is lesson for 6-6, which we're covering rotations today. What a rotation does is that a rotation turns a picture. It doesn't change its size. It doesn't change its shape. It's just being turned. Think about the hands of a clock. All right. There's two different kinds of rotations. We have clockwise rotations and we have counterclockwise rotations. Clockwise rotations go around like the hands of a clock do. So if you think about the hands of a clock, clockwise goes around like this. It goes from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock to 5, and it keeps on going around and around and around and around. Counterclockwise is backwards clock, 12 to 11 to 10 to 9 to 8, and it goes around and around and around like that. So clockwise goes around like the hands of a clock. Counterclockwise is backwards clock. If we think about the letter A, all right, we have in all the pictures today, you'll be given an original picture, all right, or in this case, I called it the first picture. This is our original picture. This is where we're starting off from. So if you think about this letter A, if I do a 180, all right, if I do a 180, if I'm snowboarding, if I'm skateboarding, if I'm skiing, if I'm dunking a basketball, if I do a 180, I turn halfway around in the air. So if I take my letter A and I turn it halfway around, if I turn it halfway around, I'm going halfway around like that. All right. So halfway around is a 180. And that would make my letter A look like this. Notice that it's the same size, the same shape. It's just turned upside down. Now, 180s can go clockwise and they can go counterclockwise. If I go clockwise, I'm spinning around like the hands of a clock. I'm going around like that, and it ends up like that. If I go counterclockwise is backwards clock, I end up like this, but it ends up the same way. So that's why you're going to see that 180 does not have clockwise or counterclockwise with it. It's just 180. Now, again, think about skateboarding, skiing, snowboarding, dunking a basketball. If you do a 360 is one complete turn around, all right? You do one complete turn in the air. So if I do one complete turn of the letter A, I go one complete time around and I end up right back where I started from. I could do a 360 going clockwise, or I could do a 360 going counterclockwise. It all ends up the same. When you do a 360, it ends up right the same exact way that we started off with. So that is an original picture. Our 180 goes halfway around, a 360 goes all the way around. 180 and 360 don't have clockwise or counterclockwise because it ends up the same way no matter what. Now, half of 180 is 90. So if a 180 is halfway around, that means a 90 is half of that. It would be half of that. So it would be a quarter turn. Now, this is going to matter because it matters which way we turn it, whether we go clockwise or whether we go counterclockwise. So let's take a look at clockwise first. Clockwise goes around like the hands of a clock does. So it's going to go around like this. So clockwise, 90 is going to turn like this. So the top is going to be to the right, same size, same shape. It's just turned on its side. It's a quarter turn. Where counterclockwise is backwards clock. So if I go from 12 to 11 to 10 to 9, it's going to look like this. So a 90-degree rotation is just a quarter turn. So now let's take a look at what we're going to do with it. So in all of the pictures, you're going to be given your original picture. This is the picture that we're starting off with. This is the picture that we are going to manipulate or change every single time. We always refer back to the original picture. So taking a look at this one says, turn your paper 90 degrees clockwise and find the coordinates. Remember, your coordinates are X, Y, where X is how many you go over and Y is how many you go up or down. So that's very important to get those numbers right. So when we take a look at our original picture here, I want to turn my paper 90 degrees clockwise. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it 90 degrees clockwise. Turn, turn, turn. I'm turning like the hands of a clock. I'm going from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So my paper ends up like this. And I would strongly suggest actually turning your paper like that. All right. So you're going to have your paper and you're going to turn it, all right, 90 degrees clockwise. Now, when you take a look at this, what you have to remember, all right, what you have to remember, and I'm going to go back to this one. What you have to remember is that positive numbers always go up and to the right. Negative numbers always go down and to the left. No matter how you turn your paper, you have to always remember positive numbers go up and to the right. Negative numbers go down and to the left. You're going to ignore the numbers on your paper, all right? You just have to keep in mind, positive numbers go up and to the right, negative numbers go down and to the left. Some numbers will be the same, some numbers won't be the same. So if I go and take a look at this one, where is my A now? Now that I turn my paper 90 degrees clockwise, where is A at? Starting in the middle, I'm going over to 1. That's still 1. That's good. But then I'm going down. Now it looks like it's 1, but it's not 1. Anytime that you go down, down is always negative. So we're going over to 1, down to -1. So A prime is 1, -1. It says +1, but anytime that you go down, down is always negative. Where is B at? Starting in the middle, over to 1, so that's good. But then we're going down. Now it looks like you're going down to 4. You're not going down to 4, you're going down to -4. Because anytime that you go down, down is always negative. Letter C, starting in the middle, over to 5, that's good. Down, now it looks like it's down to 4. But remember, anytime that you go down, down is always negative. So this is really 5, -4. Now that you have your coordinates, now you're going to go and graph those points. 1, -1, over to 1, down to -1. This is our new A prime. 1, -4, over to 1, down to -4. This is our new B prime. And then 5, -4, over to 5, down to -4. This is our new C prime. Connect the dots to form your triangle. If I turn my, notice that it matches that shape exactly. And that will happen every time. If I turn it back to what it originally looked like, notice what I did here. I did a 90 degrees clockwise rotation. I moved 1 complete quadrant. I went from here to here. I did a quarter turn of the graph. Anytime that you move 1 quadrant, you're moving 90 degrees. And what direction are we going in? Well, it starts off at like 2 o'clock here, and it ends up down here, which is at like 5 o'clock. So if it's going from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, that would be 90 degrees clockwise. We're moving 1 quadrant. Take a look at this one. In this one, it says turn your paper 180 degrees. Well, when we turn our paper 180 degrees, we go completely upside down because we do a complete half turn of the graph. Now we've got to find our quadrants, or we got to find our coordinates rather. Where is A at? A looks like it's at 1, 1, but it's not at 1, 1. Anytime we go to the left is always negative. Anytime we go down, down is always negative. So we're not going to 1, 1. We're going over to -1, down to -1. Remember, you have to ignore the numbers that are on your paper. Anytime you go up and to the right, that's positive. Anytime you go down and to the left, that's negative. B double prime. B double prime. Where's B at? Starting in the middle, it looks like it's over to 4, down to 1. It's not over to 4, down to 1. Anytime we go over to the left is negative. Anytime we go down, down is negative. So we're really going over to -4, down to -1. C prime. Starting in the middle, we're going over to 4, down to 5. We're not going over to 4, down to 5. Anytime we go over to the left is negative. So that's really -4. And then anytime we go down, down is negative. So that's really -5. So this is really -4, -5. Now we're ready to graph. So now that we're ready to graph, that's a 1 there. And now that we're ready to graph, we start in the middle, over to -1, down to -1. This is A double prime. Make sure you put the 2 little apostrophes there. -4, -1. This is B double prime. And -4, -5. Over to -4, down to -5. This is C double prime. Connect the dots. Notice that we have that same exact triangle that we had over here. If we move our paper back to the original, notice that we moved 2 quadrants. Notice that we went from here to here to here. We moved 2 quadrants. Anytime you move 2 quadrants, it's a 180-degree rotation. It doesn't matter if you go clockwise or if you go counterclockwise. Even if we went counterclockwise, 1 quadrant, 2 quadrant. We're going from like 2 o'clock on the clock to like 8 o'clock on the clock. So we're moving 2 quadrants. That's a 180-degree rotation. Let's take a look at 90 degrees counterclockwise. Counterclockwise is backwards clock. So we need to turn our paper a quarter turn backwards. So going back in time, 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock. So we went backwards a quarter turn. So that's what it looks like. Where is A triple prime? So A looks like it's at over to 1, up to 1. It's not over to 1. Anytime we go over to the left is always negative. You have to ignore the numbers on your paper. Anytime you go to the left is negative. So over to -1, up to +1. B, starting in the middle, over to, it looks like 1, but it's not 1, it's -1, and then up to +4. For C triple prime, starting in the middle, over to 5. We're not going over to 5, we're going over to -5. So over to -5, up to +4. So now we are going to graph these on this graph, over to -1, up to +1. This is A triple prime. -1, 4. This is B triple prime. And over to -5, up to +4. This is C triple prime. Connect the dots. And notice that we have that same shape. If we take a look at about how we actually turn this picture, if we turn it back to how it started off at, notice that we moved 1 quadrant counterclockwise. We went from like 2 o'clock to like 10 o'clock. So we went backwards in time. We moved 1 quadrant. So that is 90 degrees counterclockwise. On your homework today, you're going to graph all 3 of those on the same one. So you're going to have your original picture. All right, let's say that this was our original picture. This was our 90 degrees clockwise rotation. Because we moved 1 quadrant clockwise. This was our 180 because we moved 2 quadrants, 1, 2, or we could go 1, 2. And this was our 90 degrees counterclockwise. So when you take a look at this on your homework, it's very, very important that you label them properly. All right. Your 90 degrees clockwise are always going to get single primes. Your 180s are always going to get double primes. Your 90 degrees counterclockwise are always going to get triple primes. But this is what it should sort of form that pinwheel type effect, where it looks like it's turning around the origin, around 0, 0 in the middle. So let's take a look at question number 1 on your homework, and let's do this one together. All right. So let's take a look at number 1. First thing that we want to do is we want to do a 90 degrees clockwise rotation. So you're going to take your paper and you're going to turn it 90 degrees clockwise. What I would suggest doing on your homework is find all 9 coordinates, then go back and graph all of them. That way you're just looking at one picture the whole time. You're not looking at multiple pictures and trying to figure out which one you're going to look at. So anyway, we turned our paper 90 degrees clockwise. When we go to look for the clockwise, where is A at? Starting in the middle, we're going over to 3. It looks like we're going down to 3. But remember, anytime we go down, down is negative. So A prime, sorry, I was looking at B. Looking at A, we're going over to 3, down to, it looks like 1. We're not going down to 1, we're going down to -1. So A prime is 3, comma, -1. Whereas B prime, now it's the 3, -3. Over to 3, down to -3. It says +3, but it's not positive. Anytime we go down, down is really negative. Then we're looking at C. Starting in the middle, over 0, down to 1, but it's not down to 1. Anytime we go down, down is always negative. So it's 0, comma, -1. Now, I would not graph these until the very end. So I'm going to turn my paper back to normal. And now the middle column says do a 180. I could either turn it 180 going clockwise, or I could turn it 180 going counterclockwise. It does not matter, but your paper ends up completely upside down. So when your paper is completely upside down, all of the numbers are wrong. Where is A really at? A looks like we're going over to 1 and down to 3. We're not going over to 1, down to 3. Starting in the middle, we're going over to -1, because -1 is to the left, and down to -3. So -1, -3. For B double prime, starting in the middle, over to 3, down to 3. It's not over to 3, down to 3. Over to the left is really negative, so that's over to -3. And going down, down is negative as well, so that is -3 as well. So over to -3, down to -3. Whereas C at, over to 1, up to 0, but it's not over to 1, it's over to -1, because anytime you go to the left is negative. Now we have to do our 90 degrees counterclockwise rotation. So we turn our paper back to normal, 90 degrees counterclockwise. That's backwards clock, and we're going a quarter turn. So it looks like that. Where's A really at? Starting in the middle, over to 3, up to 1. It's not over to 3, up to 1. Anytime we go over to the left is always negative. So this is over to -3, up to +1. Where's B at? Starting in the middle, over to 3, up to 3. It's not over to 3, up to 3. It's over to -3, because anytime we go over to the left is always negative. And then C, over 0, up to 1. That one happens to be correct. All right. Over 0, up to 1. So now that you have your 9 coordinates, you're going to turn your paper back to normal, and you're going to graph these points, and it should form that pinwheel type effect. So let's take a look at 90 degrees clockwise. Over to 3, down to -1. This is A prime. Over to 3, down to -3. This is B prime. Over to the 0, down to -1. This is C prime. Connect the dots, and there's our picture. I'm going to do this next one in purple. All right. 180, over to -1, down to -3. This is A double prime. Make sure you put 2 little apostrophes. -3, -3, over to -3, down to -3. This is B double prime. And over to -1, up to 0. This is C double prime. Connect the dots. I'm sort of going over my label there, but that's okay. And we get that picture. And then for the other one, I'm going to do this one in orange. We're going to do 90 degrees counterclockwise, over to -3, up to +1. This is A triple prime. So make sure you put 3 little apostrophes this time. -3, 3, over to -3, up to +3. This is B triple prime. And then 0, 1. 0, 1 is right there. Over to 0, up to 1. This is C triple prime. Connect the dots. And notice the picture that we have. Notice how that triangle is turning. All right. Notice how that triangle is turning. We're going from starting our original. We're going one turn. That's the 90 degrees clockwise. Two turns is 180. And if we go backwards is 90 degrees counterclockwise. So that's what you're going to have to do. The big thing that you need to remember is that positive numbers always go up and to the right. Negative numbers always go down and to the left. You have to ignore the numbers that are on your paper once you turn your paper.